Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling, and I'm your host. Now, we are all aware that on this last constituency break, the Liberals were running around the whole country trying to spend more of our money on things that we probably don't need, just chasing, just throwing more money after the same programs that have already failed. And next week, after Monday, they're going to come into the House of Commons and they're going to start saying how, everybody said there's no, that it was announced that there was 90,000 jobs created, and as a result, everybody should be looking at it in this rosy, rosy picture. But there's a lot they're not telling you. And so I want to break down some of the things that they're going to say. And that revolves around the information is released by Stats Canada under what's called the Labor Force Survey. So as we start, I want to show you first the government's own release of what the Labor Force Survey is. Before we get into it, I would encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this channel with your friends. All right, let's watch this short little clip.
After the Second World War, there was an urgent need to understand the major labor market changes related to Canada's transition to a peacetime economy. This is why the Labor Force Survey, or LFS, was developed. Today, the survey is just as important. The LFS is Statistics Canada's largest and longest-running household survey. Approximately 56,000 households across the country participate every single month. This large sample means the LFS can provide reliable data for different parts of the country and for specific groups, such as youth or recent immigrants. The LFS estimates of employment and unemployment are vital measures of the health of the Canadian economy. For this reason, the LFS is the only household survey with mandatory participation. Changing technology is a key part of the LFS story. In 1945, data was collected on paper in face-to-face interviews. In the 1970s, interviewers started doing some collection by telephone and began recording data on computers in 1994. Survey participants were first able to use a web-based questionnaire in 2015. The survey content has evolved too. Since a major redesign in 1976, the basic methods haven't changed, giving us more than 40 years of uninterrupted data. But questions have been added over time. The LFS now covers a wide range of topics, such as wages, union status, and work absences. It can help us understand how the labor market is affected by economic and social changes or events, such as recessions, the aging population, or even natural disasters like floods and forest fires. Governments, businesses, and social agencies use information from the LFS to make important decisions that affect the day-to-day lives of Canadians. For example, billions of dollars in employment insurance benefits are transferred to individuals every year, partly based on regional unemployment rates provided by the LFS. For nearly 75 years, Canadians have been participating in the LFS and helping provide high-quality data on the country's labor force. What will the next 75 years bring?
Okay, so you heard that, you saw that. That was the government trying to tell you how the labor force, how they gather unemployment numbers and how they gather employment numbers. They ask 56,000 people a month. You know who they don't ask? They don't ask anybody in the First Nations. Those people are excluded from the survey. So it's not an accurate depiction. It's not a good cross section. It's predominantly only good in the major cities. And even so, if you take 56,000 and you divide it by 13, you'll see that you're not talking to that many people in every city. The only way they can be put on it mandatorily is if they've already applied for unemployment. And so the numbers that they're gathering are not necessarily foolproof. They will just take a survey of how many people are unemployed in the region. How many of them are coming up to, if you've got a job today that starts in a month, then they won't call you unemployed. They'll say that you're going to be employed. There's a whole host of factors where they keep knocking you back because they don't want this number to be high. Okay, so Christy Freeland's going to come in there on Tuesday and she's going to start screaming about how the economy is doing much better because they started 90,000 jobs. It'll be her only answer to every single solitary thing that they have to say, unless they're talking about, Ukraine. And even if they are, I'm sure she's going to try to slip it in. Though it's not, the reason that I know that is because it's not accurate. And because it's not accurate, she's going to try to make you think that life is better than it actually is. And here are the results. And we can see that employment increased by 90,000 jobs in April. Unemployment rate was unchanged. And the employment rate held steady at 61%, excuse me, following 6 consecutive monthly declines. Now that's important for a couple of reasons. One, summer jobs end about 6 months ago. And so there was a steady decline as people lost their jobs. And now all of a sudden they're saying, oh, we got 90,000 new jobs, but the same number of people, 61%, are still employed. And none of those people seem to have come off the unemployment rate, because the bulk of those jobs are not jobs that any of those people are going to try to follow. What I'd like to show you is how the employment increased in April in professional, scientific, technical services at 26,000, in accommodations and food at 24,000. So restaurant jobs, McDonald's. Healthcare and social assistance, 17,000. Almost as much as the food service industry. That's important because healthcare and social assistance in Canada means a government job. Okay, so this result was released in April. And we can see here that employment rose 90,000 in April following the little changes in March. The employment rate, the proportion of the population aged 15 and older who are employed, was unchanged at 61%. I already covered that. What I didn't cover was this. The employment gains in April were driven by part-time employment at 50,000. And on a year-over-year basis, part-time employment was up 3%. While in April, full-time employment was up 1%, 273,000 jobs, right? So that sounds really good. However, 50,000 of them were part-time. And so most of those jobs that we're talking about are part-time jobs that you can't buy a house with that. You can't really afford a car. You have to start living with people. There's not a lot of growth in a part-time job. On a year-over-year basis, the public sector employment was up by 208,000 jobs. By 208,000, outpacing the growth of the private sector by 18,000 jobs. Now, why does that matter to me and you? Because government jobs don't really qualify for the government jobs don't generate economy. They only remove from the economy. They are all paid by the taxpayer. They're not generating any money. They're not adding to the GDP. They're taking away from it. Also, many of the jobs that they're talking about are going to be, because what's coming up, summer, right? So right now there are entire industries gearing up for camp, for the day when your kid goes to the park and they learn to play basketball, or they do chalk drawings, or they go swim in, or whatever it is that the particular camp counselors have them doing when they're in their little group of 10 and 12 all over the country. Those counselors that are, of a certain age have to be hired now so that they can be ready, because the school's getting ready to let out in most of the regions of this country. So this 200,000 government jobs, it's not a way to mark the improvement in the economy. There's a small stimulus when you give them tax dollars and they start to spend it at the grocery store. But we all know that the inflation is far outstripping the income. Inflation is higher than what we're earning. So we're not improving anything, right? They're still going to be at a point where they're behind the 8 ball. Okay, another important factor. The unemployment rates up across all major demographic groups over the previous 12 months, which means the last year at the same time. That's what they mean by that. Compared to 12 months earlier, employment rates were higher among all major demographic groups. The largest increase was among youth. Their rate increased 2.9% to 12.8% overall. So it would have been 9.9% when they started to take a look at it. Now it's 12.8%. Marking the highest unemployment rate for youth since 2016. Can anybody tell me what happened in 2016? Year over year basis, the unemployment rate was up for both young men and young women by many points. Three points for women and 2.3 points for men. So all in all, you can see that even despite them saying that they created 90,000 jobs, less people are working. Unemployment rates in Canada continue to trend higher than in the United States. So when you hear them talking about how everything is better, that they're leading the way in the G7, that's not accurate. And I think that that's important to recognize, right? That they're not being accurate. So if they're not being accurate, how can you believe anything that they have to say? If they, like, I get that they don't want to look bad, but I don't think that it's okay to not look bad on the strength of not being honest. Now, we can see that unemployment is up in Canada. We can see that it's higher than any country in the G7. We can see that our economic growth is stagnant at minus 2%, which is an enormous amount. It's just a huge amount of dollars that are not being generated. And government jobs are not the way to go. So employment increases in the service industry. Service producing industries led by professional, scientific, and technical services. So in professional sciences and technical services, employment increased by 26,000. Employment rose to 88,000. There are more people working in accommodations and food services by 24,000 in April, largely offset by the decrease of 27,000. We lost 27,000 in March. We gained 24,000 back in April. That's not a good up. That's not a good increase, right? It's down. It's just that they get to say that it's higher than it was the month before, because everything of these is always measured against the month before unless they say year over year. This is the interesting one to me, right? Employment in healthcare and social assistance increased by 17,000 in April, building on an increase of 40,000 in March, right? Over the past 12 months, the fastest employment growth has been among people working in hospitals, followed by social assistance and nursing residence and care facilities, not seasonally adjusted. So again, we can see that over the last, between March and April, there were 57,000 jobs that were put into hospitals, social assistance, and nursing. Those are all government jobs, all of them. There's no generation of funds there. Now, there might be in residential care facilities some money being made by private care owners of buildings. I don't know enough to say one way or the other. I don't know what union those guys are in. I don't know any of that. I could track that information down, but it doesn't really change what I'm trying to say, as 10% of the people hired are now in hospitals and 9% are now in social assistance. So that is government jobs. It doesn't say that they were nurses, right, by hospitals. That could be administrators. It could be therapists. It could be people that wash the floor. I mean, I don't know. I'm only saying that the numbers don't let MP Freeland come in on Tuesday and try to flash big numbers in front of your eyes. Now, I'll leave a link to this because anybody can go and see it. It's Statistics Canada, and it's from this report that they are getting their numbers, right? It's from this report that everybody is making all of those claims. I'm going to wrap here. I'm going to do a couple of more like this. I would encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Leave me your comments, and I'll talk to you next time.